Well, we're on our next story, which is called Quiet. And it's an excerpt from Lad, a Dog, a classic story of a courageous collie. Now, if you're growing up when I grew up or before, and you watch TV, you probably have heard of a dog called Lassie. And Lassie is this kind of dog. I don't know if Lassie's still popular or not, but you're going to find out this dog is very similar to that dog, Lassie, if you've ever seen it on the television. So when we open Quiet, we're going to quickly scan the title, the subtitle, and just look at the illustrations. So we get an idea on maybe what's going to happen in the story. Now, we have this excerpt that I'm going to read for us right here. It says Lad, a Dog, a classic story of a courageous collie, was first published in 1919. It is based on a collection of stories that had first appeared in magazines. The book's author, Albert Payson Terhune, was a breeder of dogs. He raised and trained many collies, and Lad was his real-life pet. He also wrote other books that featured Lad as the main character. The place, in the following passage from chapter 2, was Terhune's own Sunnybank estate, where he lived with his wife and dogs. So we know that this dog is kind of based on a real life story, a real life situation, a real life dog, and it takes place in a real setting. It takes place in that author's homeland, in his area. So while we read, I want you to think about the point of view, who's telling the story, is it first or third, and is this the most effective way to tell it? So let's head on over to paragraph 1 through 3. So I'm going to slide on over. Here we go. Nope. Let's see. Let me try that again. To Lad, the real world was bounded by the place. Outside, there were a certain number of miles of land, and there were an uncertain number of people. But the miles were uninspiring, except for a cross-country tramp with the master. And the people were foolish and strange, who either stared at him, which always annoyed Lad, or else tried to pat him, which he hated. But the place was the place. So if we didn't pick it up from over here, we know that the lad is a dog. So make sure, because otherwise if we didn't know that, it'd sound kind of strange, him calling someone the master and people staring at him. So make sure that when we're reading, we remember that the lad is the name of the dog. Always, he had lived on the place. He felt he owned it. It was assuredly his to enjoy, to guard, to patrol from high road to lake. It was his world. The denizens of every world must have at least one deity to worship. Lad had one, the master. Indeed, he had two, the master and the mistress. And because the dog was strong of soul and chivalric withal, and because the mistress was altogether lovable, Lad placed her altar even above the master's, which was holy as it should have been. So it's telling me right here, it's saying that Lad, the dog, actually has two owners, the master and the mistress, but he's saying that he likes the mistress better. He placed her on altar even above the master's. So he's saying, hey, this mistress person is the one that I'm going to show the most affection or the care the most about. Now, these first three paragraphs are a little different than the rest. Sometimes before we convey key events or we get to the main chunk of the story, we have to get background information so that we understand better the events that take place later. So as we follow along, we need to make sure that we're annotating like we do normally. So this is what I have. The first paragraph describes where Lad lives, the place. I'm going to underline this because I think it's important. It's the name of the setting, where it's all taking place. The second paragraph shows how Lad feels about it. I'm going to underline he felt owned by it. And what does that mean? It just means that this is his place. This is where he lives. This is where he's grown up. This is all that he knows. The third paragraph explains how Lad feels about his owners. I'm going to underline worship, and the mistress was altogether lovable. Because it's showing me that that's the main one that he enjoys being with. Not that he doesn't like the master, but the mistress is the one that he likes the best. So these terms indicate that Lad loves and obeys his master. Now I'm going to write a summary of these paragraphs in the margin on my text. But because I'm on my computer at home, I don't really have the text over here, just how my computer is set up at home. So I'm going to be writing it on the side. Just remember, it should be in the margins over on the right instead. So Lad, a collie, lives on the place which he feels he is in charge of. He loves and obeys his owner, especially his mistress. Because remember, it says he owned the place. It's like he thinks he's the boss of it because this is the only place he knows, and he's in charge. Now we're going to keep reading, and let's see what we come up with for this next part. Paragraph 4 and paragraph 5. So let me get my annotations ready. There were other people at the place, people to whom a dog must be courteous, as becomes a thoroughbred, and who caresses he must accept. So caresses just means like pets or strokes. Very often there are guests too, and from puppyhood, Lad had been taught the sacredness of the guest law. Civilly, he would endure the pettings of these visiting outlanders. Gravely, he would shake hands with them on request. He didn't permit them to paw him or haul him about, as if they were the obnoxious dog-mauling breed. But the moment the politeness would permit, he would always withdraw very quietly from their reach, and if possible, from their sight as well. So it sounds like he doesn't really like what? He doesn't really like these outsiders, but he's forced to be polite to them. So he would endure the pettings of these visiting outlanders, saying that he doesn't want to, but because that's what he's supposed to. And why is he supposed to? Well, it's because of this guest law, saying this is how we treat guests. Paragraph 5. Of all the dogs in the place, Big Lad alone had free run the house by day and night. So he's the only dog, which implies there's more, but he's the only one who's allowed to go wherever he wants, which is, I think, pretty cool. He slept in a cave on the piano. He even had access to the sacred dining room at mealtimes, where he always lay to the left of the master's chair. With the master, he would willingly unbend for a romp at any or all times. At the mistress's behest, he would play with all the silly abandon of a puppy, rolling on the ground at her feet, making as though to seize and crush one of her little shoes in his mighty jaws, wriggling and waving his legs in the air when she buried her hand in his masses of his chest ruff, and otherwise comforting himself with complete loss of dignity. So with the mistress, he what? He plays like a little puppy. So it's showing how much he loves the mistress. Now, I got a little carried away of myself. I'm going to write my summary of paragraphs 4 and 5. So let me get my annotation up. Lad knows because of the guest law that he needs to treat guests politely, period. But he would much prefer to be left alone and not have to deal with them, period. He also has a special place at the place because he's allowed to go wherever he wants, day and night, period. And now let's make that a little bigger. And so this is my summary of paragraphs 4 and 5. So now let's finish paragraphs 8, 9, and 10 and see what we have for this next part. But to all except these two, he was calmly unapproachable. From his earliest days, he had never forgotten he was an aristocrat among inferiors. So he's saying he's better than others. And calmly aloof, he moved among his subjects. So he's thinking that, hey, he's a little bit better than all of these other dogs, all of these other animals. So let's set that for our next summary. So let me insert, there we go. Lad enjoys playing like a puppy with the mistress, period. He also thinks that he's better than all of the other people and animals that are around, except for the master and the mistress, period. So now let's make it a little bigger so we can read it. And then we're going to do our summary of 9 and 10. Then all at once, into the street routine of the House of Peace came horror. Oh, and notice how it's capitalized right here. So maybe that's telling us something bad is going to be happening. It began on a blustery, sour October day. The mistress had crossed the lake to the village in her canoe, with Lad curled up in a furry heap on the prow. On the return trip, about 50 yards from the shore, the canoe struck sharply and obliquely against a half-submerged log that a fall of freshwater had swept down from the river above the lake. At the same moment, a flaw of wind caught the canoe's quarter, and after that, the manner of such erratic craft, the canvas shell proceeded to turn turtle. Turn turtle. So I'm thinking of a turtle in my head, and a turtle has that shell on its back, which to me tells me what? Tells me that the boat has probably flipped over. So this is going to be where this story is going to end, because we're going to continue it in our next video. So I need to do my summary of 8, 9, and 10. So first, let's do our annotation. Came horror. And what happened? Well, they crossed the lake to the village in the canoe, and then what? It tells me a flaw of wind caught the canoe, and the canvas shell proceeded to turn turtle. So I'm going to use those ideas to now write my summary of these paragraphs. The mistress is canoeing across the lake when a gust of wind catches the canoe and flips it upside down. Period. Okay, and let's make it so it's font size 16. All right, that is what we have for this morning, guys.